I wept at the altar when my parents didn't show up, and what they chose instead was beyond belief. I never imagined I would be the kind of person to open up about my private life like this, but I need to express how I feel. For as long as I can remember, I've always been the quiet and overlooked one in my family. I'm Emily, 22 years old, and a few weeks ago I married the most incredible man, Nathan. It should have been the happiest day of my life, but instead, it became a painful reminder of how little I seemed to mean to my parents. Growing up in Mapleton, Wisconsin, I quickly learned how to be self-reliant. My parents, Mark and Karen, often told me they appreciated my independence. Initially, I took it as a compliment. I was the kid who didn't ask for much, the one who avoided causing a scene. But as time went on, I realized their praise wasn't really praise at all. Being self-sufficient was simply their way of neglecting me. My older brother Ryan was always the favorite. He was athletic, outgoing, and always brought home trophies from soccer or academic contests. I didn't mind too much. He was my older brother, and I admired him. But then, 5 years ago, Ryan married Ava, and everything changed. Ava entered our family like a whirlwind. Now 30, she was already larger than life when I first met her at 25. She was confident, charismatic, and had a magnetic personality that drew everyone to her, including my parents. They fell for her instantly. At first, I liked Ava too. She was energetic and fun, the type of person who could light up a room. I admired how at ease she was with herself. But soon, I started to notice a pattern. Family dinners often turned into discussions about her. Her job, her friends, her new hairstyle, her future plans. Every holiday became the Ava show. If I tried to share something about my life, like a good grade or a new hobby, it was brushed aside. I remember one Thanksgiving, a couple of years ago, I had just finished my junior year of college and was excited to share that I had been accepted into an internship I had worked hard for. I told my family, expecting at least a hint of pride or excitement. Instead, my mom smiled and nodded before turning to Ava, asking, "Did you pick out the invitations for your party yet?" It stung. Moments like that became more frequent than I wanted to admit, but I learned to keep my head down and push through. I thought that if I kept being the good kid, the one who didn't cause trouble, maybe, someday, they would notice me too. Then came Ava's birthdays. Every year, she threw a massive, over-the-top party. Custom decorations, catering, themed events. One year, she even hired a magician. My parents treated her birthdays like national holidays, spending weeks planning, picking out gifts, and hyping up the event like it was the party of the year. Meanwhile, my birthdays were lucky if I even got a card or a last-minute dinner at a local diner. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. It was just a birthday, right? But when you're the one constantly overlooked, it starts to take a toll. When Nathan and I got engaged, I hoped things would be different. This was my wedding day, one of the most significant events of my life, and I believed, surely, this time, they would show up for me. I even picked a date that wouldn't conflict with anything. I planned everything with my family in mind because I wanted them there, to see me, to celebrate me, just once. Nathan and I weren't the type to want something extravagant, so we decided on a small, intimate garden wedding just outside of Mapleton, surrounded by the people we loved most. The venue was stunning, with an outdoor ceremony space full of lush flowers and twinkling fairy lights strung through the trees. It was everything I had ever dreamed of, simple and meaningful. As the day approached, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. Ava's birthday was scheduled for the week before my wedding. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was just a birthday party, right? After all, my wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. But the more I talked to my parents, the clearer it became where their priorities lay. Whenever I mentioned wedding plans, they seemed distracted. I'd bring up the seating chart or the florist, and my mom would cut me off to rave about Ava's party plans. "Did you hear Ava rented a food truck for her party?" she asked one evening, practically giddy. "She's even having live music this year. Isn't that fun?" "That sounds nice, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've finalized the catering for the wedding, by the way." "Oh, that's good, sweetie," she said. "Did I tell you Ava is thinking about balloon arches for her party? I think they'll be gorgeous." It was like this every time I tried to discuss my wedding. The closer we got to the date, the less interested they seemed. Then came the conversation that shattered me. A week before the wedding, my parents asked me to come over for what they called a quick chat. I thought maybe they wanted to go over last-minute details or offer help with the ceremony. But when I sat down across from them, the air felt different. My mom wouldn't look me in the eye, and my dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sweetheart," my mom began, her voice careful, "we've been meaning to talk to you about something." My heart sank. My dad jumped in, trying to sound reasonable. "We might not be able to make it to your wedding." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. "What do you mean, might not make it?" I asked, stunned. My mom sighed as though this were difficult for her. "Ava really needs us to help with her birthday party. She's been so stressed, and we promised we'd help her set up and keep things running smoothly." I stared at them, trying to comprehend what they were saying. "You're telling me you're skipping my wedding for Ava's birthday party?" "It's not like that," my dad replied, shaking his head. "You've always been so independent, Emily. We figured you'd understand." "Understand?" I repeated, my voice rising. "It's my wedding, and you're choosing her party over me?" My mom gave me a small, apologetic smile, which only made me angrier. "We'll try to make it to the reception, sweetie. You know how much Ava counts on us." Their words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe it. I left their house in tears, barely able to see the road as I drove home. When I told Nathan what had happened, he was furious on my behalf, but all I could feel was emptiness. This was supposed to be my day, the one day when I would be the priority. After years of being pushed aside, I still wasn't enough. A part of me hoped they would change their minds, that on the morning of the wedding, they would realize how wrong they were. But deep down, I knew better. For the first time in my life, I started to see my parents clearly. I spent the rest of the evening sitting on the couch with Nathan, my hands still trembling from the confrontation. I replayed their words in my mind. They might not make it to my wedding. How could I process that? Who skips their own daughter's wedding for a birthday party? Nathan sat beside me, his arm around my shoulder while I stared at the floor. Finally, I broke the silence. "I don't understand," I said, my voice raw. "Why would they do this? I'm their daughter. How can they think this is okay?" Nathan sighed, trying to choose his words carefully. "They've been prioritizing Ava for years, Em. I hate that it's come to this, but are you really surprised?" I blinked, my throat tightening. "I don't know. I thought this time would be different. It's my wedding, Nathan. It's not just some random day." My voice cracked before I could finish. Nathan pulled me closer, resting his chin on top of my head. "You have every right to feel hurt, Emily. But listen to me. This is not about you. It's about them and their inability to recognize what's important. You haven't done anything wrong. I just wanted them there," I whispered. "I wanted my parents to be proud of me for once." "I know," he murmured softly. The week leading up to the wedding was one of the toughest weeks of my life. I went through the motions of finalizing details, trying to focus on the happiness I should have been feeling. My bridesmaids were amazing. They stayed with me, helped decorate, and took care of the little things I couldn't handle. They did everything they could to keep my spirits up, but every time I looked at the seating chart and saw the two empty chairs reserved for my mother and father, the knot in my stomach tightened. At first, I told myself they might change their minds. Maybe they would come to their senses. Maybe they would realize how ridiculous they were being and show up at the last minute. That tiny hope kept me going. I didn't tell anyone else about what had happened. Not my friends, not Nathan's family. I couldn't bear to explain that my own parents had chosen Ava's birthday party over my wedding. The day before the wedding, I got the confirmation I had been dreading. My phone buzzed while I was helping set up some decorations at the venue. It was a text from my mom. "We hope the setup is going well, sweetie. Let us know if you need help with anything at the reception, in case we can swing by after Ava's party. Love you. Swing by." My wedding had been reduced to something they might stop by if they had time, like a coffee shop visit on their way home. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. "Is everything okay?" one of my bridesmaids, Lily, asked as she walked up with a box of centerpieces. I quickly locked my phone and shoved it into my pocket. "Yeah, it's fine," I mumbled, forcing a smile. "Just my mom checking in." She seemed to believe me, and I felt guilty for lying, but how could I tell her the truth? That my parents didn't care enough to be there, that they were too busy fawning over Ava to show up for one of the most important days of my life? That night, Nathan and I held our small rehearsal dinner with close friends and his family. I dreaded this part of the process, knowing my parents wouldn't be there. As we sat around the dinner table listening to Nathan's parents share sweet stories, I couldn't hold back the tears. At one point, Nathan's mom, Mary, placed her hand gently over mine. "Emily, you're going to be such a beautiful bride tomorrow. We're so happy to be here for you and Nathan." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Thank you. That means a lot. It wasn't fair." I should have heard those words from my mom and dad. After dinner, Nathan walked me back to my apartment. The air was cool and still, but my thoughts were chaotic, swirling like a storm I couldn't calm. He glanced at me as we stopped outside my door. "Emily, are you okay?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I'm not okay. Tomorrow is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and all I can think about is that my parents won't be there." He took both of my hands and looked at me seriously. "Listen to me. Tomorrow isn't about them. Tomorrow is about us, about starting our life together. I know this hurts, but I promise you, we're going to have a beautiful day." I nodded, but his words didn't fully sink in. How could they, when the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had made it so clear that I wasn't a priority? On the morning of the wedding, I woke up with an overwhelming sense of dread. My bridesmaids arrived early, full of excitement as they helped me get ready. They did their best to fill the room with laughter, but I couldn't stop the storm inside me. I tried to shake the heaviness in my chest as Lily softly asked, "Are you okay?" While curling my hair, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my eyes red and my face pale. "Yeah," I lied. "Just nervous, I guess." When we arrived at the venue, my breath caught in my throat when I saw the two empty chairs at the front. They stood there, glaring at me as if mocking my pain. While my bridesmaids moved around, ensuring everything was perfect, I slipped away to the dressing room. I locked the door, sat down in the corner, and let myself cry. I couldn't stop the tears. This was supposed to be the best day of my life, but all I felt was heartache. I don't know how long I stayed there before there was a knock on the door. "Emily?" Nathan's voice was soft and full of concern. I wiped my eyes quickly and called, "Come in." Nathan entered and immediately knelt in front of me. "Hey," he said gently. "What's going on?" I shook my head. I don't know if I can do this, Nathan. I don't know if I can walk down that aisle and pretend everything's fine." He cupped my face in his hands, making me meet his eyes. Emily, you don't have to pretend. I know this hurts. I know it's not fair. But when you walk down that aisle, I'll be waiting for you. And that's all that matters. We're starting our life together, and nothing can take that away from us." His words were enough to pull me back from the edge. I took a shaky breath and nodded. "You're right. I just wish it didn't feel this way." "I know," he said softly, "but you're not alone in this. You have me, you have our friends, you have everyone here who loves you." He helped me up, and as I stood in front of the mirror one last time, I tried to push all the hurt aside. I told myself that today wasn't about my parents or Ava's party. It was about Nathan and me, about our love, our future, and the family we were building together. I walked out of that room, ready to face the day, even if my heart was still breaking. The moments before I walked down the aisle felt surreal, like I was caught between a dream and a nightmare. My bridesmaids had already gone ahead, leaving me alone at the entrance of the garden. The soft notes of the music floated in the air, blending with the quiet chatter of guests settling into their seats. I gripped my bouquet tightly, the stems pressing into my palm as if holding on harder would somehow keep me steady. The sun was bright, filtering through the trees and casting patches of light on the ground. But all I could see were those empty chairs. 2 seats in the front row marked "Mother of the Bride" and "Father of the Bride," untouched and glaring like painful reminders of what was missing. They should be here. My mom and dad should be sitting there, smiling at me, whispering about how proud they were. But they weren't. I let out a shaky breath when the wedding coordinator appeared beside me, her face bright with a smile. "It's time, Emily. You look perfect." Perfect. The word felt wrong. I didn't feel perfect. I felt hollow. But I nodded because there was no turning back now. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into view. The soft hum of conversation faded, and all eyes turned to me. I tried not to look at anyone except Nathan, standing at the altar. There he was, waiting for me with his hands clasped and a look of quiet reassurance in his eyes. His smile was steady, calm, like an anchor pulling me toward him. I focused on him and nothing else, forcing myself to move forward one step at a time. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't block out the empty spaces in the front row. They felt louder than the music, heavier than the flowers in my hands. I blinked hard, swallowing the knot in my throat. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but I couldn't stop the ache spreading through me as I passed my Aunt Linda. I caught a glimpse of her teary smile, her expression soft and full of love, and for a moment I felt the weight lift slightly. I kept walking, step after step, until I finally reached Nathan. He took my hand in his, the warmth of his touch steadying me. His thumb brushed against my palm as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice quiet enough for only me to hear. I smiled faintly, blinking back tears. I wanted to focus on him, on us, on this moment we had planned for so long. The officiant began speaking, but his words were a blur in my ears. I tried to concentrate, but my mind kept drifting back to my parents. Were they at Ava's party now? Were they laughing and celebrating, completely unbothered by the fact that they were supposed to be here? Did they even think about me? When it came time for our vows, Nathan spoke first. His voice was steady and full of love, and his words cut through the fog in my mind like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Emily," he said, looking directly into my eyes, "from the moment you came into my life, you've shown me what it means to love and be loved. You are my best friend, my partner, my everything. I promise to stand by your side through every joy and every challenge. You are my forever. The tears I'd been holding back threatened to spill again, but this time they weren't from sadness. They came from the love and certainty in Nathan's voice. When it was my turn, I took a shaky breath and looked at him, willing myself to focus only on him. "Nathan," I began, my voice trembling, "you've always seen me, even when I felt small, even when I felt invisible. You reminded me of who I am. You gave me a place to feel safe, to feel loved. I promise to love you as fiercely as you have loved me, to stand by your side, and to share my life with you completely." His hands tightened around mine, and I could see the love in his eyes. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of peace. We exchanged rings, and I watched as Nathan slid the band onto my finger. The moment felt like a promise. Real, solid, unshakable. The officiant smiled and said the words I had been waiting for. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Nathan leaned in, his hands gently cupping my face as he kissed me. The crowd erupted into applause, and a small smile crept onto my lips. I had done it. We had done it. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Hugs, congratulations, flashes from the photographer's camera. I went through the motions, smiling and thanking everyone who had come, but the ache inside me never fully left. I kept looking over at those chairs, expecting my parents to walk in at the last minute. They didn't. At the reception, I tried to push everything aside. The garden was beautiful, with fairy lights hanging overhead and candles glowing softly on each table. Nathan's parents, Mary and John, were incredible, making sure the guests were comfortable and enjoying themselves. At one point, Mary approached me with a plate of cake. "You haven't eaten anything, sweetheart. You need to take care of yourself today." I took the plate and smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Mary." She gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "We're so proud of you, Emily. You're a beautiful bride, and we're so lucky to have you in the family." Her words caught me off guard. Proud of me. My heart clenched painfully as I nodded and thanked her. Later in the evening, I needed a moment alone. I slipped away from the crowd and sat at a small table in the corner of the garden, hidden from most of the guests. My phone buzzed in my purse, and for a second, I let myself hope that maybe my parents had texted me, that maybe they were on their way. I pulled out my phone and unlocked it. There was no message from them, only a new post from my mom on social media. It was a photo of her and Ava at the birthday party, standing under a massive balloon arch. My mom was grinning, holding a glass of champagne, while Ava stood beside her like a queen. The caption read, "Celebrating Ava's big day. So proud of her for pulling off such an amazing party." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. My parents had skipped my wedding to go to that. They were celebrating, laughing and smiling, while I stood here on one of the most important days of my life. Alone. The tears came before I could stop them. I shoved my phone back into my bag and wiped my cheeks quickly. But the ache in my chest was unbearable. "Emily?" Nathan's voice startled me. I looked up to see him walking toward me, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," I said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. He crouched down beside me, his hand brushing my arm. "You don't have to say that. What's wrong?" I shook my head as more tears slipped down my face. "It's just my parents. I saw the pictures. They're at the party right now, having the time of their lives. They didn't even call. They didn't even try." Nathan's expression softened, and he reached up to wipe a tear from my cheek. "Emily," he said quietly, "they don't deserve to take this day away from you. They don't deserve a single thought." I looked at him, my voice trembling. How could they do this? How could they choose her over me? I don't know, he admitted. But what I do know is that you're not alone. Look around you. These people are here because they love you. I love you. That's what matters. I took a shaky breath and let his words sink in. He was right. Even though the pain didn't go away, I wasn't alone. I had Nathan. I had people who showed up because they wanted to celebrate us. For the rest of the night, I tried to hold on to that thought. Even as the hurt lingered like a shadow I couldn't quite escape. The day after the wedding, I woke up feeling like I was moving through fog. The whirlwind of the ceremony and reception was over, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing on my chest. Nathan made us breakfast, sliding a plate of eggs and toast in front of me with a small smile, but I barely touched it. "Emily," he said gently, "you need to eat something." I stared down at the food, picking at it with my fork. "I just don't get it, Nathan. How could they not be there? How could they do that to me and act like it's no big deal?" Nathan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Because they don't want to admit they're wrong, and they don't want to take responsibility for hurting you." I looked at him, tears stinging my eyes. "But they're my parents. I've always tried to be the good one, the one who doesn't cause problems, the one who doesn't demand." "Doesn't that count for something?" I asked, my voice trembling. Nathan reached across the table and gently took my hand. "It should, Emily, but the way they act says more about them than it does about you." His words were comforting, but the hurt still lingered. I couldn't shake the image of the empty chairs and my parents laughing at Ava's party, posting on social media as if it were the most important day in the world. I needed answers. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't bear it any longer. I grabbed my keys and told Nathan, "I'm going to talk to them." He didn't try to stop me. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to do this on my own." The drive to my parents' house felt like it took hours, even though it was only 15 minutes away. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest as I rehearsed what I was going to say. "You missed my wedding. Do you realize what you've done?" When I pulled into the driveway, their car was there, and I could hear faint laughter coming from inside. I took a deep breath, walked up to the door, and knocked twice before stepping inside like I always had. They were sitting in the living room, my mom curled up on the couch with her phone, and my dad scrolling through something on his tablet. My mom looked up first, her smile fading slightly when she saw me. "Emily," she said cautiously, "we weren't expecting you to stop by." I stood there, fists clenched at my sides. "I think we need to talk." Mark glanced up from his tablet, clearly uncomfortable. "Is everything okay?" I scoffed, unable to hold it back. "No, everything is not okay. I came here to ask you how you could skip my wedding for Ava's birthday party." My mom sighed, setting her phone down as though this were just an inconvenience for her. "Sweetheart, we already told you Ava needed us. She was stressed, and we promised we'd be there to help." "Ava was stressed?" I said, my voice rising, anger finally bubbling to the surface. "She throws a party every year, Mom, every single year. And you're telling me that her birthday was more important than my wedding?" "It's not about importance," my dad said quickly, trying to sound reasonable. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been so independent, Emily. You've never needed us the way Ava does." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you listening to yourself right now? I'm independent because I had to be. You were too busy treating Ava like the center of the universe to notice me." My mom's expression hardened. "That's not fair, Emily." "Not fair?" I shot back, my voice trembling. "You're right. It's not fair. It's not fair that I had to walk down the aisle and see those empty chairs where you were supposed to be. It's not fair that I spent the most important day of my life feeling like I wasn't enough for you. And it's not fair that you don't even seem to care." For the first time, both of them were silent. My dad shifted uncomfortably, and my mom crossed her arms as if trying to shield herself. Finally, my mom muttered, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but what's done is done. You can't keep holding on to this." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I had come here hoping for an apology, for something that showed they understood how much they had hurt me, but they didn't even take responsibility. I shook my head, my voice quieter now. "I'm not holding on to anything, Mom. You made your choice. You chose her over me, and you didn't even think twice about it. You missed my wedding. I don't think I'll ever get over that." My dad opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned on my heel and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel as tears rolled down my face. I had hoped, foolishly, that they'd say something, anything, that showed they cared. But all they had done was make excuses. When I finally got home, Nathan was waiting for me on the porch. He stood up as I walked toward him, his face full of concern. "How did it go?" he asked softly. I shook my head, my voice breaking as I said, "They don't get it, Nathan. They don't care." He didn't say anything. He just wrapped me in his arms, holding me tightly as I let the tears fall. For the first time, I let myself grieve. Not just their absence at the wedding, but years of being pushed aside, of never being enough for them. When I pulled back, I looked at Nathan, searching for his steady reassurance. "I don't know if I can forgive them," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever. If that's what you decide, you don't owe them anything, Emily." Hearing those words made something shift inside me. For so long, I had held on to this idea that I needed my parents' approval, that their love was something I had to earn. But Nathan was right. I didn't owe them anything. That night, I sat down with a blank notebook and started writing. I poured everything onto the page. The years of feeling like I didn't matter, the heartbreak of their absence, the way they refused to acknowledge how deeply they had hurt me. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. By the time I set down the pen, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't magically healed, but I had taken the first step toward letting go of the hold they had on me. And for the first time, I realized that I didn't need them to see me. I had people who already did. The days following my confrontation with my parents were strange and heavy. I kept waiting for a text or a call, some kind of follow-up where they'd finally say the words I needed to hear. Maybe a real apology. Maybe even an acknowledgement that they had hurt me. But my phone stayed silent. Nathan stayed close to me, sensing that I was struggling even when I didn't say it out loud. On the third day after the confrontation, I sat on the couch, staring out the window at nothing in particular. Nathan sat beside me, rubbing small circles on my back. "Are you okay?" he finally asked, his voice gentle. I shook my head. "I don't know. I feel like I'm waiting for something, even though I know it's not coming." "Emily," Nathan said quietly, "you don't need to keep waiting for them. You don't need their validation to move forward. You have me, you have our friends, and you have so many people who showed up for you." I looked at him and managed a faint smile. "I know you're right. It's just hard." He didn't push me further. He just let me sit there, sorting through the mess in my mind. That afternoon, everything took a turn when I got a call from my Aunt Linda. She had always been outspoken, the only person in the family who wasn't afraid to call things out for what they were. "Emily," she said, the moment I answered, "I heard about your parents skipping the wedding. Is it true?" Hearing her ask the question out loud stung all over again, but I forced myself to respond. "Yeah, they said Ava needed them for her birthday party. They promised her they'd be there." There was a long pause, and then Aunt Linda let out an exasperated sigh. "I can't believe them. I really can't. That is absolutely shameful. Emily, I am so sorry. You deserved so much better than that. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thank you. I don't know what to do with any of this. Honestly, it's just a lot. She snapped sharply. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not letting them get away with it. They need to hear how wrong this was. Wait, Aunt Linda, what are you talking about? But before I could get an answer, I heard the faint chime of a notification on my phone. When I pulled it up, I saw it. A message in the family group chat. Aunt Linda, I can't believe Mark and Karen skipped Emily's wedding. Ava's birthday party? That is beyond unacceptable. This family needs to get its priorities straight. I stared at the screen, frozen, not expecting Aunt Linda to say something so publicly. My heart raced as I watched the chat explode with messages. Cousin Rachel. Wait, what? Is this true? They didn't go to the wedding? Uncle David. What's going on here? Someone explain. Grandma. I can't believe this, Emily. I'm so sorry. If I could have traveled, I would have been there, front and center for you. The messages kept pouring in, some from cousins who were shocked, others from relatives who were furious. I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. I hadn't wanted to drag the family into this, but at the same time, seeing everyone rally around me brought a sense of validation I hadn't expected. Then came a private message from my mom. Mom, Emily, I can't believe you let Linda air our private business like that. We don't deserve to be vilified over one mistake. I stared at her words, my hands trembling. One mistake? That was all they thought it was. A simple, forgettable mistake. I took a deep breath before replying. I didn't ask Aunt Linda to say anything. People are upset because they see how much it hurt me. That's on you, not me. She didn't respond after that, but I could feel her anger in the silence. It didn't matter. For once, I wasn't going to let her make me feel guilty for something that wasn't my fault. What surprised me most was that later that evening, my brother Ryan finally reached out. He called, and when I saw his name pop up on my screen, I hesitated before answering. Hey, I said cautiously. Emily, Ryan began, his voice quieter than usual. I just wanted to check on you. How are you doing? I almost didn't know how to answer. I'm okay, I guess. Why are you calling, Ryan? He let out a long sigh. Because I should have said something earlier. I know what Mom and Dad did was wrong. I didn't want to get in the middle of it at first, but now, I don't know. I feel awful for not standing up for you. I gripped the phone tighter. Ryan, they chose Ava over me, and you let it happen. You didn't say anything, and that hurt too. I know, he admitted quietly. You're right. I should have spoken up. I guess I just didn't realize how bad things had gotten until I saw the photos. Ava's party was over the top, and I couldn't stop thinking about you and the wedding. I'm sorry. His words caught me off guard. For years, Ryan had silently let Ava soak up the spotlight, and my parents catered to her every whim. Hearing him admit that he saw it, really saw it, felt like a small step toward healing. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally, but it's going to take me a while to forgive any of this. I get that, he said. I'm trying to set some boundaries with Ava too. I don't want this to happen again. When we hung up, I sat on the couch for a long time, processing everything. Ryan's words didn't fix what had happened, but they gave me hope that maybe things could change. At least someone in my family was starting to see how much damage had been done. That night, Nathan and I sat on the back porch, the cool air quiet around us. I told him about Aunt Linda's messages, my mom's reaction, and Ryan's call. It's a mess, I admitted, staring up at the stars. Nathan wrapped an arm around me and pulled me closer. Maybe, but you don't have to clean it up. Emily, you've carried enough of this already. I leaned my head against his shoulder. I know. I'm just so tired of it all. Then let it go. he said softly. Focus on the people who showed up for you, the people who love you. That's what matters. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of peace settle in my chest. He was right. My parents might never understand the pain they caused, and maybe they would never take responsibility for it. But that wasn't something I could control. What I could control was how I moved forward, and I was ready to start letting go.